Well, welcome, Laura, to our Leaders Who Care series. Finally, I got you on. It was like one of my dreams to get Laura on the Leaders Who Care series. So I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Mark, and I apologize. We had to we postponed it a couple of times, but we're finally here. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it.
No,
I'm
no,
looking forward to this.
no need to apologize. Although, as I tell people, the more you say sorry, the more honorary a Canadian you are. So congratulations on that. Let's start with, if you could briefly introduce yourself. We'll get to the business stuff in a minute, but where you're originally from, where you are now, family, what your favorite color is, apparently red, something you've never told anybody ever and you want to reveal to the world right now. If you want to do that, that's fine too. But
Okay.
just share a little bit about Laura.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Laura Thomas. I head up executive search at Reckitt. I have a very too long career in exec search. I won't tell you how long. But for the most part in healthcare and pharma. And in a previous life, I started off in marketing. And I've been at Reckitt now. Today's my 1 year and 2 days. So
Yes.
I celebrated my anniversary a couple of days ago, which is fabulous. So background, I was born in Singapore. I am a daughter. I'm third girl in the family. Third girl out of three girls. My poor dad. My mom was a teacher. She was head of department for English. And my dad started life as a math teacher, but then moved into the military, and so he was a career military man, basically. So, uh, very patriarchal culture. Very much the man of the house. But with three women in the house, it was pretty hard for him to. What else? So I've considered myself really international. I've traveled and lived in lots of different countries and cities. Absolutely love it. Drag the kids along, and it's been kind of dual career, husband's career, my career as well. So we step back for the other one, and we kind of moved along, and that way as well. So what do I want to tell you about me that I've never said? I don't think I've not said this to anyone, but I guess for me, if I had an alternative career, if I had a choice, I would love to be a spy. So that would
That's
be
fine. All right. Well, there's a lot going on right now. There's opportunity.
I know, indeed. I'm sure I saw an ad from MI. No, I'm not kidding. But yeah, that's kind of a childhood, and also because of my dad's military career, I was very much the tomboy of the family. I was kind of always hanging out with dad, and things like that. So kind of came from that. I've never been a girly girl. Somebody I love my sport, and I love just hanging out with my father and his mates.
So he's what do they call it? A daughter's dad? What's that expression they have now? Um, if you're a dad of all girls type of thing, you're a girl dad or a daughter's dad or
Oh,
something.
dad, I don't know the term, but yeah, no, he's handled it very well. So I've got two wonderful big sisters, one in Australia and one in Singapore.
That gives me a good segue into seeing what were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you like recruiting friends and siblings for a lemonade stand or a garage sale? Were you watching movies? Were you doing
I was I was a sporty child,
okay.
very sporty. So track and field was my love. Um, so much so that my mom actually had to come to school and question my teachers as to whether did Laura actually have to go for training rather than do her studies. Because being a teacher, right, and unfortunately she knew a lot of my teachers as well. So, but yeah, that was very much part of my growing up. Absolutely loved it. I wasn't exactly recruiting friends with lemonade stands, but I did grow up in what we call in Singapore at that time we call it kampong, so very much village life. So just running out, hanging out, running around barefooted. That was and things like that. So very the natural life for me, that kind of background, in a way, kind of resonates and is coming into racket. There's a lot of correlation as
Right.
well. It brings me back to my childhood.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens. I'll get back to that. How it becomes a thread that you didn't even know was a thread, if you
Yeah,
will, or an
yeah.
interest in stuff. Well, tell us then a little bit to start with about your journey. You started studying marketing at Curtin University, and then what intrigued you to to do that and then earn a master's in HR management in Dublin?
So the marketing was not of, well, it was my choice. It certainly wasn't a choice of my dad's, because both my sisters are finance people, accountants, and he thought that he was going to open an accounting firm. But I was much more fascinated around the marketing, the PR, the business side of it. Really, really enjoyed doing that. And the masters came along quite some time later,
Right.
after a bit more career. And when I was actually working, I was in the MD of a boutique firm in Singapore, UK firm that sent me out to Singapore to set up the Singapore office. And so very different times of life, very, very different, right? University, late teens, and then later on in my career, when I was running a business, doing the masters, a couple of little kids, and a very supportive husband, a long-suffering, supporting husband.
So with that, you took an important full-time parenting career break, I guess you would call it.
Yeah,
And
before that.
how did that feel for you, taking that break?
The break itself, taking the break was wonderful.
Mhm.
Obviously, having the my lads, coming out of the break is where it was difficult, because I actually had to kind of think, for about 2.5 years, I've been talking in Bob the Builder and, and dinosaurs and stuff like that, right? So how did I build up enough confidence to go back into the workplace, essentially? And that was the hardest bit, because I've always been, I mean, I am an introvert, uh, naturally, right? And so, and coming from a marketing background, in those days, marketing used to be, I mean, marketing is much more out there now, but in the early days, it used to be very much a back office, marketing services, doing it, all that kind of stuff. The people front and center and out there with the salespeople, right? So I always say I would never do sales. It's not me. But then coming out of the maternity break, I said to my husband, I think, I really need to put myself out there, right? And just push myself to communicate. So I took on a sales job, a mobile sales job, doing telco at that time. Gosh, that was so hard, but it really kind of completely pushed me out of my comfort zone. I was walking into offices completely blind, carrying my bag and things like that. So, yeah, it was. But I needed that push. I needed to say to myself, "Look, Laura, if it doesn't work out, at least you've given it a go." But that built it up, and of course, I might have 7 appointments a day with completely different people. I'll be walking into a lawyer's office one appointment, next appointment I'll be walking into a garage. So you just have to flex yourself around how you speak and how you deal with different people. So it was tough, but very fulfilling.
Well, even way before the remote stuff and whatnot, I would ask people, so does your spouse work inside or outside the home, type of thing, whether it's a guy or a gal, there's just, type, and because you're running a whole business staying home too, in a way as well.
Yeah.
There's a thing going on there. How
Yeah.
would you describe your experiences and how you honed them to be able to, even the sales things you did, the work, the organizational skills and parenting at home? How did all that experience and then the executive search experience help you integrate into what you're doing now in internal corporate leadership in global search?
Okay. Gosh. So the common thread through all of that
Or
is
I
having
guess I should say, do you now treat all the people as kids because you had a lot of experience doing that?
that there's always someone there, right, along the path with you. And as I said, I'm going to have a very lucky. So my husband was in financial services also, and when I decided to go back to work, he he stepped out of corporate life and set up his own business. So he actually became, someone who stayed at home and looked after the kids to
Mhm.
give me the opportunity, which is incredibly brave. And also at that time, it was quite unusual.
Right.
certainly in the society we were in, right? For a man to do that. So super brave that he did that. I'm very grateful that he did that as well. He was, cleaning, changing nappies and things like that. It was just something he wasn't used to, but he picked it up and ran with it. So your question mark around, how I've kind of transitioned from that piece to going into search. It's all been a lot with opportunity, and honestly timing, right? And there's always a bit of luck in that, meeting the right people,
Right.
getting along with the right people, and getting the right counsel as well along the way. And so I've been fortunate. I've met some, some that, you take their advice with a pinch of salt, but there's been a lot of them that who are really really robust, solid advice and guidance, right? um Search for me, going into search was honestly a little bit of a mistake, in the sense that I thought it was a sales job. Went for an interview, thought it was a sales job. It is a sales job, right? At the end of the day. So, um, but is it, what we're doing is very different. We're dealing with people at the end of the day. But that's how I, like a lot of people in TA or recruitment, they kind of, transition into it, um, from one career to another, and then find their niche. And I absolutely found my niche. So I started off in like financial services. We were doing, I was headhunting bank managers, commercial directors right across the UK. Then from that, then I went into professional services. So, and that's my first step into healthcare, when I was working a lot in setting up consultancies, hiring management consultants, particularly to do with public health, local government, central government. That's how kind of the journey along the way, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and then I moved to Singapore with another boutique firm, well, actually, they're a global firm, and they sent me out there. And so that was my first foray into pharma and life sciences. And that was a steep learning curve. I remember my then boss, he came in on my first day, handed me this huge manual and go, okay, learn about life sciences. I was like, oh my gosh, not being a scientific person, but you pick it up along the way, get to know really great people. Um, I think organizationally, I'm quite detail oriented as a person, so I like things compartmentalized in my head, and
Right.
at work as well. And so it was almost kind of a natural thing, I think. And feedback from past reporters or past people who've worked with me, we're still, it's like 10 years later, 15 years later, we're still very close. We're still counseling each other and guiding them. I'm so proud to see so many of them who've risen up in their careers as well and doing incredibly well. So it's around building the right environment. And I don't have all the answers, but having a collective and everybody chiming in with their thoughts, and we pick the best out of it, right? And we continue to tweak and keep making it better. What's great, we keep it, and and embrace it and enjoy it. What's not so great, we continue to work on it as well. So every day is a learning day for me.
Yeah, no kidding. I interviewed a CEO, it must be about a year ago now, where he said, I'm having the most fun and being the most effective I've ever been as a CEO, because I can actually show emotion sometimes. I can be vulnerable. I don't have to pretend to know all the answers.
Mm.
And I trust my people, and they're working even better. Uh,
Yeah,
and there was a time where that wasn't allowed, as well. And you had to
yeah.
be, you had to be, so it seems like there's a thread of, and this is where the whole leaders who care thing comes in, that I found in my career, that the most effective bosses, mentors, etc. I had really did care about me, really did, and influencers, which we'll get into. They really did care about what was going on in the business, etc. And I think the parenting, the sales, the experiences that you've had, even as you talked about the thread of what you liked as a kid, all comes into play in who you are and how you treat people. And it's a people industry that you're in, right?
Yeah, totally. It is a people industry, and we have to be very mindful of that, right? So one of the things for me always, and you talk about leaders who care, and I think we touched about on this previously. For me, there's always that mantra in talent acquisition that we have a duty of care. We have a duty of care to our own organization, right? Making sure that we're hiring the right people who's going to come in with the right mindset and right ambition to build the organization. But we also have a duty of care to these candidates to actually say to them and be honest to them and say, this is going to be right for you, this is going to be fantastic for you, or we don't think it's right for you, and I don't think this is the right opportunity. So I think in recruitment there's so much pressure, because there's so much pressure to fill the role and hire. TA organizations are always under a lot of pressure with time to fill and all that kind of stuff. But we still need to have the respect and have the dignity to kind of say to somebody, I think this isn't right, but I think this is absolutely wonderful. You're the perfect person for it.
And that applies external search and internal search, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's sometimes it's harder internally, I have to say, right? Because you want to give it, you want everybody to have the opportunity to kind of grow and develop into it. Externally, there's less of an expectation that you will get the job, I guess is the best way to put it. But internally, it's always great to promote internally because they understand the culture, they understand how things work, and the pace, especially at Reckitt, the pace of how things go. As well. So it might not resonate with others, or it takes others, external candidates, longer to land, which they would typically, right? You need to get used to it. And then it's up to us to help them on board well and give them all the tools necessary to make sure that they're successful.
Well, it's funny. I remember a long time ago, somebody said, man, you must love having a client that has a lot of turnover. You get a lot of searches. And I would say, that makes no sense whatsoever. If I'm trying to present great people, they don't want to work where there's massive turnover at a company. They want to work where people are being advanced in that company. That makes a lot more sense. I understood the logic of that person. Well, you'll get a lot of jobs or whatnot, but that's not what you want. And I think what you say is so important, because one thing we talk about a lot is when people go home from work, there's two things that happen. They see their spouse or partner and the kids, and they say, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Get me a beer. I want to sit on the sofa. We didn't do anything worthwhile today. My boss yelled. I don't even know what we're doing in the city. Or they come home and say, hey, you guys, let's have dinner. Let's get together. I want to tell you what happened today and what I achieved. I might get a bonus. And they're letting us volunteer to do this special nonprofit thing over there and whatnot.
Yeah.
And kids and the spouse and the partner hear that, and there's an impact that you'll have on the kids. And you want to talk about sustainable talent, if you will. The kids are hearing that and feeling it. So they're thinking, wow, I could do that. I could work for a company. I could be an entrepreneur. I could do this. I could do that. So it really does have an impact in what you're doing.
Yeah. And we have children who are at the beginning of their careers as well, right? So how do we guide them in the same way that we guide our candidates? And they need to see the purpose and impact of what we're doing as well. I remember years ago, my second son, who was quite little then, and I was working with GSK at that point, and he watched a commercial on telly, a toothpaste commercial. He came, he went, I think you need to tell your advertising people, Mum, that commercial doesn't resonate with me. I think he was probably about 8 years old at the time. He told me, I was like, okay, okay, so tell me why, right?
There's your focus group right there.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's the future. He's the one going to be doing the shopping later on. But what's important, and so there's a whole, for me, the industry that I work in is super important. It's going to be something that I identify with, right, and I'm proud of as well. And I'm a bit of I would say environmentalist, but I'm very supportive of the environment, and I'm on a committee of our forest, like a friends group for the forest and things like that. So it's very important to me. Recycling and all that is really important to me. So very much this kind of has kind of flowed through the family. The family is very, very similar to And it's great, right? It's really great that the next generation, because they're the ones who are really truly going to save the world, right? So yeah,
Yeah, and
we
there's an
have.
urgency. There's an urgency like none other right now for the younger generation. Every generation wants to make a difference, but this one sees the urgency and is doing something, which leads me to they say the fifth industrial revolution is about humanity because the fourth is about technology, AI, etc., and which is going super fast. And we actually founded our firm on the basis that leaders and businesses can do way better when they're doing good at the same time, where impact and talent do come together, and when they come together in harmony, that's where you're doing your best. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you expand on how you see Reckitt making both an economic and social impact because of diversity, because how you make that important in how you attract and retain people, how, again, like we said, how it impacts families, how it impacts the community?
Mm. So, like every other company, right, we have our objectives around ensuring we are gender balance at leadership level, and we're working towards that. And it's not easy ultimately,
Right.
um, for to be able to do that. But you have to want to do it, and you have to put in those actions and objectives to do it. Otherwise, it's too wishy-washy, and everybody's like, I would like to, but never actually happens. So for us, I mean, again in TA, we have mandates both for us internally and externally with our partners, making sure that, like other companies as well, right? Bring the right balance into the recruitment process,
Mm-hmm.
but also have the right balance from our perspective in terms of interview panels. How do you interview in a different way? How do you
Right.
I'm from Singapore. Do I express myself in a different manner? That's that diversity. And if it's somebody who doesn't particularly understand the culture, how do you coach them to probe a little bit so they actually get there? And just because there's maybe a slight communication gap, it doesn't mean it's a capability gap. It's around, okay, and how do we deal with this as well? Diversity, ultimately, I remember years and years ago when gender diversity was first became an agenda item, was the simple thing around, women do the shopping, right? So we make the decisions. There's a big part there.
Sure.
Um, it's but there's a voice that's coming out now with diversity, ethnicity, gender. There's a bigger voice. People are listening as well, and so we have to do that. I mean, I think for me, I think about my earlier career, being ethnically Chinese, working in a Western society. It was not easy. I'll be honest with you. It was quite difficult, right? It was, you know, and I'm dealing with people 30 years older than I am, right? To kind of say and giving them guidance around brand equity and things like that. They're like, "What? Who are you?" But now it's moved on so much that yes, it still happens, but compared to how it was when I first started. So I'm so happy to see things continuing to move,
Well,
and they'll continue to do so.
yeah, sorry. If you think about it, it's not rocket science that different perspectives actually can be good.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
wow, what a novel concept that different perspectives, different ideas. We do a lot with one of our nonprofits we work with has a program called Nonflict, and we do a lot with, people. People need to embrace conflict in a way that it's just different ideas. It's not something
mm,
you hate somebody over. It's different ideas that you want to hear. If you don't have different ideas, you're probably not going to be as good as you should be. And to your point about it's different now. What I find also a lot, I'm sure you do too, is and it's we purposely work with Leaders Who Care because of this. When I interview women or people, minorities, etc., they'll ask me, "Well, does ABC company? I can do that." They'll say, "I can do the job for sure," and we won't present anybody that can't do the job. But they'll say, "But will they let me work on the most significant projects? Will they let me really be engaged? Will they let me maybe fail and overcome the challenge? Will they recognize me? Will they really mean it that this is what I'm going to be able to do?" So with
yeah,
respect to that, how do you handle that, and how do you encourage up and coming women leaders who care to be successful in a company as well?
I think you have to go and seek out the opportunities and be brave doing it, rather than hoping somebody will recognize you
Mm.
and give it to you. Yes, of course, there's always the element, right? You know, you do a great job, you perform well, all your, your personal development, appraisals, everything's going perfectly as well. But if you really want to be visible, then networking internally is really important, because you know people around you who work with you know you well. But when you work in an organization that's got 50, 60, 70,000 people, not everybody's going to know you, right? So, and not many of us are, I mean, some people are natural networkers. Some people are not natural networkers. So, reach out, have a coffee, especially. So I have quite a few people reaching out to me saying, can we just have a chat? Tell me about you and things like that. And I've always done that. And it's just people who are going to universities to talk about how they can improve their brand image as well, right, in the nicest possible way, right, in professional way. But for women, one of the things that for me, I think I can only talk on a personal basis around my
Yeah.
own experience, is be yourself. And you cannot be somebody else. You cannot frame yourself to be somebody else. I did that more, of course, like everybody else. We kind of go, okay, I'm gonna pretend to be somebody else, and hope that works. And of course, we all morph and evolve in our ways, the way we talk, the way we present ourselves. But fundamentally, you have to be who you are and what you believe in, and bring those values with you. So I just I've changed so much over the years and grown so much over the years, but that was, I guess, natural evolution through both as a mom, right, as a wife and a family, and also be brave enough to kind of move, go to different countries, go to different cultures, understand what it is, because that again gives you such a much more holistic understanding. And to your point earlier around, just embrace that diversity. And I mean, the difference thought, even something as simple basic as language. You have this wonderful articulate way of your narrative. I'm going to steal some of the ways that you actually frame a sentence, right? And I picked that from you. So the more we kind of communicate and talk across cultures, um it's great. And we pass it along. I think is a very big piece of it as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it's so much more fun and interesting and educational and informative and everything. And it improves performance at work. I think it improves family. The kids see the zeal, they see the spark, they see things that are going on that they wouldn't see before. And listening to people, and we'll talk about influencers, listening to people really does make a difference. First of all, people are gratified that you actually listen to them, and then you have discussions and so on and so forth. But it's interesting because I see how you've navigated through, and you remind me of there's a quote, I think it's my favorite quote of all time. Maya Angelou talks about how people will most of the time forget what you said initially. They'll forget what you've done, but they'll always remember how you made them feel,
Mm,
which is actually brilliant and simple
yeah,
again as well.
yeah,
And I'm not in her class, but I'm thinking if people will remember you by how you made them feel, there's probably a pretty good chance they'll then remember more about what you've talking about and what you've done.
yeah.
Otherwise, they won't. And for getting ahead, I think that makes a big difference too. Well, we say in LA that you got to leave them wanting. You got to leave them wanting more, so we can do a sequel. Which is but I have one more question I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
In the year 2021, I had a client tell me about 2020. He said, Mark, the year 2020 has flown by slowly.
Mm-hmm.
But what a great line. Um,
Okay.
because how many of us the last 3 years, like I was in DC recently and I met some people that I've been talking to for 2 years and I haven't met yet, type of thing. Because it's like
Mm.
pre-COVID time when or and stuff. And so with respect to all that's happened in the last few years, what are you most grateful for, and what are you also most hopeful for?
I am most grateful that we've had incredible people, scientists, doctors, healthcare professionals, key workers, um, who does, while I sat at home during the pandemic, they were out there grafting and finding a cure and finding a vaccine and still doing that. I'm so grateful to them. That's what I'm most grateful for the people who've really done that. Because they have given me and my family the just opportunity to come out of a pandemic and pretty much carry on life almost like did the pandemic happen? Do you know what I mean? I think we forget too quickly, don't we?
We
Honestly.
do. We do.
Um, and that's what I'm super, super grateful for. Honestly, I don't know half a percent. I don't know, like 99.9% of them, right? But I think about the guys with the garbage guys coming around and they were still doing jobs, and I used to run out there with a 6-pack of beer and leave it there, and things like that, because it's just so grateful that people are still out there grafting and working. So on yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have the lifestyle that we have now if that was the
Right.
case. The second question, what do I hope for?
What you're most hopeful for, exactly?
um that we don't go back in the situation that we had before, right? So we're better prepared as a world. And it takes institutions, governments, regulatory authorities, and it takes people as well. I know we still have a few flat earth people and anti-vaxxers and things. Yeah, okay, then that's diversity. People have different kinds of thought. But my hope is we really appreciate what we have now, and and stop messing things up, really. Then and we're going to be here for hopefully a little bit longer than we maybe thought we would be in 2 years ago, as a society, right, as a human race. Maybe that's a little bit but yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And I think Mother Nature was basically saying, look, you got a shot here. Um,
Mm.
see what can happen. Remember when the canals of Venice started turning blue and the birds were singing, and if I had birds, they're always singing out here. I swear they were singing opera and saying something like, I don't know where all the people went, but this is awesome. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
there's a town up in the north of Wales called Llandudno, and because it was so deserted, all the wild mountain goats basically came down from the mountains and wandered around the streets, and and they're going to people's gardens. And actually, what's lovely, just I think it was last week, the council has, and they're still coming in now, even though the people are back, but the council has said that I think they ruled that leave the goats alone, let them come around, and and enjoy life. So we'll live together and exist together, which I thought is great.
that's beautiful. That's a movie in itself right there. But that's goats are actually used for a lot of good things. Actually, that's another conversation. But
We can talk about goats another day.
I love that. Hey, I'm grateful that you are a new friend, if I can go say that, and I'm grateful that you are a leader who cares, because every one of us can make a difference, and you're definitely doing that. So thank you for joining us on the series.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been lovely talking to you. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you.